Hi, welcome back to Wallflowers. So today I wanted to have a really honest, open conversation with you, and I wanted to go deeper than I normally do because I think you deserve to understand not just that food prices are rising, but why, what's actually causing this, where it comes from, and crucially, what we can do about it. I've been watching events unfold over the last few weeks and months. And I believe we're at a genuinely significant moment, one that will affect every household in this country, including mine. So please make yourself a cup of tea, get comfortable, and let's talk properly. Now, most of us have already felt this. The weekly shop costs more than it did a year ago, more than it did 6 months ago. Certain things on the shelf, eggs, bread, fresh vegetables, you notice it, don't you? But here's what I want you to understand today. What we've seen so far may only be the beginning. The reason is not just inflation in the general sense. There are three very specific, very real pressures converging at exactly the same time. And when things converge like this, the effect isn't just additive, it's multiplied. Those three things are the Strait of Hormuz crisis, what that means for the fertilizer that grows our food, and the financial pressure here at home. I want to walk you through each one clearly and honestly, because once you understand the chain, you'll understand why I'm talking about this now and why being prepared makes complete sense. Let me start with the Strait of Hormuz. Now, you might be wondering, what on earth has a waterway in the Middle East got to do with the price of bread in a British kitchen? Well, it's quite a lot actually, as it turns out. The Strait of Hormuz is a narrow stretch of water. We're talking about 33 miles wide at its narrowest point. That sits between Iran on one side and the Oman on the other. And this one small channel passes through 20% of the world's oil and 20% of the world's natural gas every single day. Before the current crisis, over 100 ships would pass through that strait, carrying energy supplies to the rest of the world. Since the conflict involving the US, Israel and Iran escalated, that number has dropped over 100 ships a day to just a handful. The British media has reported on this directly. Ships are simply not passing through. And what's been happening since March 2026 was recorded as the largest ever monthly increase in oil prices in history. Now, oil and gas are obvious. We understand that affects petrol, heating, but the story goes much deeper. Because through that same strait passes something else that most people don't think about. A third of the world's fertilizer. And that's where the food chain truly comes under threat. So let me explain the connection, because it genuinely surprised me when I first looked at it properly. Most of the fertilizer that grows the world's food is what's called synthetic or nitrogen-based fertilizer. And to make it, you need natural gas, not as a fuel, but as a raw ingredient. Without getting too technical, there's a process called the Haber-Bosch process, developed over a century ago and essentially one of the most important inventions in human history, that takes hydrogen from natural gas and combines it with nitrogen from the air to produce ammonia. Ammonia is then the base of the ingredient for the fertilizers that go into the fields. So when natural gas becomes scarce or extremely expensive, you simply cannot make fertilizer at a normal price, or sometimes at all. And now here's the part that really matters. It's not just natural gas that passes through the Strait of Hormuz. Some of the world's largest fertilizer manufacturing plants are in the Gulf region. Iran is the fourth largest exporter of urea in the world, urea being one of the most widely used fertilizers on the planet. Qatar is home to the world's single largest urea export site. A company called QAFCO, QAFCO, which is Qatar's fertilizing company, and it supplies 14% of the world's urea. That plant's been offline for almost a month after strikes on Qatar's gas plants, and the Qatari government has said it will take 3 to 5 years to repair the damage. The UN's Food and Agriculture Organization, the body that monitors global food security, is calling this a double shock for farmers. They're facing higher fertilizer costs and higher fuel costs simultaneously. Egyptian urea, which is the global benchmark price, has risen more than 60% in just weeks, going from around $484 a tonne to over $780 a tonne. The Guardian has described this as a food security time bomb. David Miliband, head of the International Rescue Committee, put it starkly. The window to avert a massive global hunger crisis is rapidly closing. And the World Trade Organization has said that fertilizers are now the #1 issue concern in global trade. Now, some people may think, well, surely Russia or other countries can fill the gap. Russia does supply about a fifth of the global fertilizers normally. But the supply chain cannot simply switch overnight, and the timing of all this matters enormously. March and April are the Northern Hemisphere's planting season, the window when farmers put fertilizers in the ground to grow crops that we eat in the autumn and winter. Researchers at the Kiel Institute have said a relatively brief closure could disrupt an entire growing season with food security consequences that persist long after the strait reopens. In other words, even if peace is declared tomorrow, the damage to this year's harvest may already be locked in. Now, I want to share something with you that I think is powerful. Illustration. I think it's a powerful illustration of what can happen when fertilizer disappears suddenly, because this isn't theoretical. We've actually seen this happen. In 2021, the government of Sri Lanka decided overnight to ban all synthetic fertilizers. They wanted to go entirely organic within months, not years, months. Crop yields collapsed by up to 50%. Food prices exploded. The government had to declare a state of economic emergency. Hundreds of thousands of farmers faced complete ruin. There were food shortages, the economy crashed, and the government ultimately fell. Sri Lanka did this to themselves through policy. What we're facing now is the same mathematics, a sudden severe reduction in fertilizer supply, but through external forces that no single country can simply reverse. I'm not telling you this to frighten you. I want to be really clear about that. I'm telling you because understanding the why is how we respond wisely. So, which foods are most affected? Let me be specific, because I think it's more useful than just a general warning. The foods most vulnerable to fertiliser shortages are those that depend most heavily on nitrogen fertiliser and those that have long, complex global supply chains. So, firstly, bread and wheat products. Wheat is one of the most fertiliser intensive crops. British media research suggested a full Hormuz closure would push global wheat prices up over 4%. That means bread, flour, pasta, noodles, everything that starts in a field. Then there's fresh vegetables and salads. The UK imports a very significant proportion of its fresh produce, particularly in the late winter and spring months. Fruit and vegetable prices could rise over 5%, according to the same analysis. Potatoes and root vegetables, highly dependent on fertiliser. Rice, a global staple, impacted by supply chain disruption and energy costs. Dairy and meat, these are indirectly affected because the animals that produce milk and meat eat feed, and that feed's grown using fertiliser. When feed costs go up, milk and meat prices follow. Essentially, if it came out the ground or it was raised on food that came out the ground, it will be affected, which is more or less everything. Now, I want to talk about something that's slightly different, but equally important, and that's the financial side. We're living through a period of significant economic pressure in this country. Interest rates, the cost of borrowing, the cost of running a business, inflation, all of it's bearing down on ordinary households and on the financial system as a whole. And I know many of you have questions about your savings and whether they're safe. So let me share something practical that I think everyone should know. In the UK, there's a scheme called FSCS, the Financial Service Compensation Scheme. And what it means in simple terms is that if a bank or a building society fails, if it goes under, the government guarantees to protect your savings up to a certain amount. And here's the important update. As of December 2025, the limit was raised from 85,000 to 120,000 per person per banking institution. Per person per institution. That last part matters. So say you have 200,000 in savings and it's all sitting in accounts in the same bank. Only 120,000 of that is protected. If the bank was to fail, and whilst it's rare, it does happen, the money above that limit would be at risk. The simple practical thing to do is this. Spread your savings across different banking institutions so that no single bank holds more than 120,000 of your money. Different institutions, not just different account types at the same bank. A savings account and a current account at the same bank would still only be covered for 120,000 combined. If you're part of a couple and you have a joint account, the protection applies to each person separately. So a joint account would be covered for up to £240,000. There's also something called temporary high balance protection. If you've recently received a large sum, let's say a house sale, an inheritance, a redundancy payment, or even a personal injury settlement, the protection can be as high as 1.4 million, but only for 6 months. So if that applies to you, don't sit on it. Take advice and get it properly structured. I want to say something gently here. I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice in any official sense. Please do speak to a qualified professional about your personal situation. But these are facts that everyone should know, because I believe that knowledge protects us. And the FSCS information is freely available on the government's own website. How about you? Have you looked into this before? Tell me in the comments. I'm genuinely curious how many people know about the protection limits. So given everything I've just shared, what do we actually do? And this is the part I really want you to hear, because I promise it's not as overwhelming as you might think now. Those of you who've been here for a while, you'll know the way we are here at Wallflowers UK. We use the food initiatives, scratch cooking, careful shopping, pressure canning, and the stock cupboard. This wasn't just a lifestyle choice. This was always, at its heart, about resilience, about not being entirely at the mercy of circumstances beyond our control. And right now, I think that's never been more relevant. Here's what I'd suggest thinking about. Firstly, use every money-saving resource available to you. The food initiatives and discount food stores. Places that rescue food and make it available at a genuine fraction of supermarket prices. Become even more valuable in this environment. These places are not a last resort. They're a smart strategy. And I'll keep showing you exactly what's available and what the savings look like in my haul videos each week. Secondly, shift towards scratch cooking where you can. The further you get away from processed and prepackaged food, the more control you have over your costs. Breads, soups, stews, pulses, dried grains, etc. These are some of the most economical things you can cook, and some of the most nourishing. A bag of lentils, some homemade stock, a handful of herbs, and anything else you might have available. That's a meal that costs pennies and sustains a family. Thirdly, build a quiet buffer gradually. I want to be very, very clear here. I'm not suggesting panic buying. Please don't go out and strip the shelves. What I'm suggesting is that over the coming weeks, if you find something at a good price that keeps well, pasta, rice, dried pulses, tinned tomatoes, flour, oats, consider buying extra, quietly, steadily. A small stock cupboard isn't stockpiling, it's prudent housekeeping, and it gives you a genuine sense of calm and security, and I think it's really valuable in all uncertain times. Fourthly, if you have an outdoor space at all, even a window box, even a single pot, this might be the year to try growing something edible. Herbs, salad leaves, tomatoes on a windowsill, or even in a hanging basket. It won't feed a family entirely, but there's something deeply grounding about producing a small part of your own food. And right now, I really believe that matters. And finally, look after each other. This is what our community is for. Share information like this. Check in on neighbours. If you find something at a remarkable price, tell a friend. The people who come through difficult periods best are never the ones with the most money. They're the ones who are concerned, connected, resourceful, and kind. I want to leave you with this. Throughout history, throughout wars, through rationing, through recessions, and hardships of all kinds, ordinary people have found extraordinary reserves of ingenuity and resilience. Not because life was easy, but because they refused to be defeated by it. That spirit is not lost. I see it every single week in this community, in the comments, in the messages you send me, in the way you share ideas and we help each other. It's genuinely one of the most heartwarming things in my life. I'll keep coming here every week with the hauls, the recipes, the ideas, and the honest conversation, because I believe that what we share here in our community, especially now, is so important. If you find this useful, please do share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you've got thoughts, things you're already doing, or questions you even want me to address, please share them in the comments below. I read every one of them. Thanks so much for joining me today. Please take care, remember you're loved, and the world is a better place with you in it. Bye, love.